Slightly because what about when you're born and you get the British passport?
British
etc.?
passport? So you're British?
Yeah, are you British just because of the passport?
Interestingly, I think all of you are kind of right. It appears contradictory, it's not. Words like British have multiple meanings. There's a core and a peripheral, and you'll see that with many, many terms. So you'll see, for example, to be British, some people will use it to mean their nationality. It's being used as a synonym. A word has its own meaning, and most words will have their own core meanings, but they're often used to replace other words. So like to say, she's a lion, or a lioness, he's a lion. Now nobody in their right mind would ever think he's a furry creature with paws and roars. Okay? The word lion has an essential meaning, a core meaning. It's an animal, you can point to it, yeah? And then it has peripheral meanings, like synonyms, that he's brave, or like metaphors, or a whole variety of other possible meanings. The word British, and this is a confusion that's going on, it will have a core meaning and peripheral meanings. So one peripheral meaning is it's used for nationality. So I'm British, my passport, I'm Pakistani, based on my passport, and that's valid. It also has a geographical usage, meaning that wherever you live, you're known as that person. So you'll see like Suhaib al-Rumi at the time of the Prophet, he was from that region. This man was Bilal al-Habashi from Abyssinia. He has a geographic meaning, usage as well. But when the government uses it, and when it's used in a political context, it has a slightly different meaning. It refers to how you bind yourselves with the rest of society. It's used as an identity construct, a socio-cultural political construct. 3 elements it has to it. Collective history, a collective polity, a collective culture. These 3 elements are what defines it. So for example, there's a polity, a political state, yeah, like Britain, borders. It's a homeland, historic homeland. The British Isles, it's got maybe the Falkland Islands and Northern Ireland. That's the land. We all share it. To be British, that we're all part of it, we recognise Scotland, the Peak District, geographical markers, that's the collective homeland, part of our polity. Collective history, 1066, Henry VIII, the kings, the queens, World War I, World War II, Shakespeare, Chaucer, collective history. Collective culture, the pub, the bowler hat, EastEnders, pub, drinking alcohol.
Tea.
Cup of tea, oh, tea.
Tea, yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was the pint he was referring to. Culture, yeah? So these 3 elements, and then finally the polity itself that brings them all together, democracy, Big Ben, Houses of Parliament, the flag, the British flag, British law, these 4 elements, these 3 and the polity, is what is meant by being British, a political identity. That's its core meaning. So the government talks about it, they're referring to the core meaning. You guys don't agree. When we hear it, oh, he's thinking I'm not British, for some reason I don't eat fish and chips, or I don't have a passport. Well, here I do, here's my passport. Look, I live here most of the time. I was born here. He's not getting at that. What does it mean to be Muslim when you talk about the collective identity? What does that mean? What's our polity? One Imam. The Shia put it into their Aqidah, that this is part of a creedal point. The old classical Sunni scholars used to do that as well in their books of creed. One Imam, one Khalif, one Sultan. Our law is Sharia. We have, our flag is, the flag of the Prophet was Shahada in black on a white background. The Prophet had wazirs, Abu Bakr, Umar. Yeah? What's our collective homeland? Allah's created Adam on the earth. The whole earth is a homeland of the Muslim, and should be. So that should be our collective homeland. What's our collective history? Allah created Adam Islam, or even before that, the pre-history, but Adam Islam, children, Anbiya, Rasulullah Sallallahu, the Seerah, Khulafa Rashid, Umayyads, Abbasids, Ottomans, Safavids, Mughals, Muslim Spain. That's our collective Islamic history. Our culture, Hijab, Jilbab, beards, halal food, fasting, Ramadan, celebration of the Eids. So we have a collective polity, collective history, culture, and homeland. That's the Islamic political, socio-political identity. Now, are they mutually exclusive? Is there an overlap? Or are they equal? They are mutually exclusive. Do you believe in Sharia law or British law? Do you believe in Christmas or Eid? Do you believe in and venerate and are proud of the Norman kings and queens over the last 700 years? Or the Abu Hanifa, Shafi, Maliks, the Mu'tasimas, the Umar ibn al-Khattabs? Is that your history?
Is it necessarily a binary system? I mean, I'm sure there's
If you can reconcile them, there is some overlap.
Yeah,
like in the British culture, they allow fish and chips, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can eat fish and chips because we have the construct of halal. But why do we allow fish and chips? Because halal.
Yeah.
They'll have pork. What's their criteria? Something different, benefit, harm.
Yeah, but I know, but we're
So
working on.
can you really reconcile the two constructs? Or
No, I
are
mean-
they producing separate directions and ways of life?
I think the Islamic framework is such that it can fit into any context if thought properly. I mean, that's why if you think about it, we've always, if you look at the Seerah, we've had 3 states. We've got the Meccan state, where we lived in a non-Muslim state, where we were oppressed, and then that's where we can model how to live in an oppressive state. You know, once the final barriers reach, you try and leave. Then you have the Medinan state, which is the Islamic state. But then you also have the what's it called, Abyssinian state, where under a non-Muslim rule, they still lived cohesively. So,
Okay.
what
Who
would you?
thinks the two are mutually exclusive? Who thinks you can reconcile them?
What I was trying to,
What
I was trying to get is that we don't necessarily need an Islamic state to still live our Muslim identity. That's what I'm implying.
Okay. Who would agree with that?
What's mutually exclusive?
Oh, it means that they're separate. You can't fuse the two together, or blend them, or intermingle them somehow, bring them. Yeah,
They're
bring them together.
independent. They're independent.
They're independent.
Okay, basically, I think
Basically,
they
secularism.
can be together. For example, we vets in this country, they're British, right? Because obviously they're British, they're just British. And if they're Muslim, they're British Muslim. They can't be anything else, for example. I mean, why should you stop saying you're British just because you're a Muslim in this country?
Okay,
Just
because
because
I'm
you're-
saying, okay, if British means, if you accept that the core meaning is that set of questions, those 3 categories, or 4 categories, yeah? If you say that, yeah, those are the 4 categories of what an identity means. If I take the Egyptian identity, their polity is is that area in North Africa. They have a certain flag, the Egyptian flag. They have certain Egyptian laws, institutions, political establishment. Their history is the history of the pharaohs. It goes all the way back to the time of the pharaohs, and then they work forward. And it's the history just of that little region. Their collective culture is jubbas, and they'll have rice, and they'll do certain things. That's part of their collective culture. And the homeland is just that region from Sinai all the way to North Africa. Now that's what it means to be Egyptian. I can go there, but unless I accept these elements or buy into them, could I be part of those people? If I disagree with all 4, don't agree with this leadership, CC and co, and their laws, institutions are corrupt, don't agree with that history, we should start with Islam later or earlier or whatever. I don't agree with this culture, a lot of problems, they do riba, usury, there's corruption going on, there's a whole culture that they created is problematic. I don't agree with this homeland, why have they got borders? Why don't they just join with Libya? They've got lots of resource, they could feed the people of Egypt. I don't agree with any of this construct. Could I be an Egyptian? If you come to Pakistan, you don't agree with the language, you don't agree with the laws, you don't agree with their collective construct, can you be a Pakistani? What does it mean to be a Pakistani? What does it mean to be British? What does it mean to be Muslim? Is what the question's getting at. As a core. Not the peripheral, the passports, where you happen to live. By those meanings, yes, you're British, you're born here, you've got a passport, you're British. Or you're French or Egyptian or whatever. Of course, there's no dispute there. It's the core meaning which is questioned.
I don't think you have to agree with cultural values, etc. Basically, what was that you just said?
You need to agree with those, wouldn't you?
I don't think you have to agree with it to be, for example, British or Egyptian. I don't agree with a lot of my Caribbean values. A lot of it I do not agree with at all because I'm a Muslim. But it doesn't make me say, okay, I don't think somebody should say you're not Sunni because of it. Do you get me? I don't think you should have to agree to become of that.
So I suppose what relevance then does that construct have?
It's there for the
What does it
collective order.
mean to be British?
It's there for a collective order. I mean,
What do you
that's so.
Isn't nationality and religion different things?
Sorry.
Nationality and religion. Because
Nationality is a separate thing.
So yeah, Salman
But this
al-Farisi
isn't
was from
nationality
Persia.
we're talking about, it's socio-cultural, political identity.
In the
we're
Prophet's
talking
time,
about.
Salman al-Farisi, the trench, they still knew him as a Persian, but he was still a Muslim.
When they say they knew him as a Persian, he was from that region.
Yeah.
But would he consider himself to be part of that society's culture? Would he agree and be happy to venerate, support, be proud of their history? Would he support or be happy or even be proud of the leadership?
But these are
Those ideas, would he buy into them?
these
Would
are
he be loyal to them? This is what it means to be, I am Persian.
But you have to
Even
be
though
loyal to
for
them, but you have to be
democracy.
patriotic to be part of the nationality or the
To be loyal means that you accept it to some degree, isn't it?
exactly.
If you don't accept it, then you mean that I have a problem with this identity.
Exactly.
You don't have to accept
There's a difference between acceptance and and acknowledgement. So acceptance is when you agree with nearly everything, whatever, right? But to acknowledge it but still disagree with it does not make you any less British. Because these things are not static. Sorry, these things are dynamic and they change.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay.
You can support Newton's work, he's British, and then you have, if you're going to support
I
British
knew he was
things,
gonna bring physics into this.
but then you have to support the bad things with like imperialism as
Do you support Einstein's work? Does that make you American?
well. He was just New German.
Originally, but he worked in America for a while, didn't he? Or you could pick American scientists, like Google, the founders have done that research. You may love it, you may like it, you may be proud of it. Does it make you American?
No, I'm just saying.
What makes you American, I suppose, would be then the counter question.
I think an interesting way of looking at this is when someone wants to become British, for example, the authorities make them swear that they're going to abide by the British law and support it.
So allegiance,
Yeah.
love,
And-
support.
Okay.
And
They make
a
you
lot
study the history,
Yeah.
so you must know his history.
a lot
They
of
make you
people-
study
yeah.
some aspects of his culture,
Mhm.
so you understand and accept some of the culture. And if you accept it and buy into it, they say, okay, you're British.
Mm.
Does it make you British? Would be questionable.
Probably the right way of saying it is probably Muslim from Britain, not British.
Muslim from Britain, it means, that's right, something different, that I am from this country. This is my geographic marker, which is okay. But we already accepted, you can say I'm British, and if someone says to you, what do you mean by that? I was born
Right
there.
then.
Okay, yeah, fine, if you're using it in that context. But if you're using it in its core meaning, and the core meaning of Islam is what? The fact we live here, I think we should be careful. We can easily be fooled into thinking we're following Islam. For example, to live an Islamic way of life is different to live as a Muslim individually. So Muslims in Abyssinia lived as partial Islam or aspects of Islam in their individual life. Socially, how do they live according to the Christian rules?
But
The
that
Muslims
doesn't
in
make.
Mecca is the same problem.
But that doesn't mean that there's any
not
less worse or
Muslims.
better than in Muslims in an Islamic state, is it?
Well,
Because-
it does, because Muslims in an Islamic state, in their social, cultural life, are living by Islam as well.
Yeah.
So as an example, you're married,
Yeah.
you have a dispute with your wife. In an Islamic state,
Yeah.
you could resolve that dispute, allocate the custody of the child, even if you're arguing and you hate each other's guts,
Yeah.
according to
Islamic
God's law, and the rights will be given, you'll be forced to follow it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your behavior in that area will be Islamic,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And
In Britain,
Yeah.
you go, you have a dispute, they won't even recognise the act of Niqaab.
yeah.
Will be thrown outside, it has no value. Common law and statutory law will be imposed, which have their own rights, responsibilities,
Yeah.
and you'll be obliged to follow those. So in that area of life, if you were behind a veil and somebody just, your actions were described, they would never know these are actions of Muslims, or British, or Irish, or Welsh, or Scottish.
Mm.
Your identity suddenly has been stripped from that area, you're required to follow something alien.
But the Abyssinian was a community where they embraced the Muslims. It was not something that became alien to them and
They allowed them to
rejected.
live there,
Yeah.
but were they living entirely by Islam?
No, of course not. I mean, but that's.
Hence, they were oppressed.
There was only
But the
temporary
thing
as
is,
well.
you have to understand
It
once.
was a temporary thing.
Once even with the Medinan state, even like 10 years later, there was, what's it called, they didn't call him once the Medinan state was formulated. They came like, some of them even came 10 years later after the Medinan state was formulated. So I think like, that doesn't mean that the Islamic state is the only solution. I think we have to make do with what we have to.
But it's the
have.
final destination.
No, yeah, I agree,
What
I agree.
No, but what alternative solution can there be? You're saying there's potentially multiple solutions
No,
of ways
I'm
of living
I'm
by
saying
Islam. What's the alternative?
pragmatically, what's it called, we have to adjust with the situations we have. Ideally, I agree with you, correct, that we have to aim for an Islamic state, we have to live by exactly what you're saying, I agree. But on a pragmatic level, even the Islamic states are not Islamic at the moment. Even the Islamics would disagree with that.
The question then arises, are they even
Yeah,
Islamic
you see,
states?
that's my
Muslim
point.
states
Yeah, so
are not Islamic.
so
Fine, I
what
agree with you.
I'm speaking from not from a
Well, aren't
theoretical.
all of these Muslim states, Pakistan, Saudi, Egypt, haven't they all adopted this construct, this social identity? They've taken these components and re-engineered them, stripping out much of Islam and inserting other things. One country calls itself Egypt, another country calls its concoction Saudi, Pakistani.
Yeah.
Didn't this all happen post-colonialism? Collaboration with European countries who believe this is the way to organize states? Maybe.
I think it boils down to one thing. It's submission to Allah's creation as opposed to Allah. So,
Submission to Allah
and
himself.
that sums it up, because you're actually, the whole thing about the laws and stuff, you're submitting to the laws of the country as opposed to the laws of Islam. The thing you said about colonialism, we're actually submitting to the colonialism, the fact that you're dividing the countries into borders and stuff like that. And these borders and stuff are actually put on by non-Muslims, not put on by ourselves.
Agreed. Okay, so the point of this example is slightly different from the others, highly political. It is very relevant to what's the debate's going on. You are inherently part of it, but it's not something which is so clearly visible as the other examples are. You can see somebody who changes their faith. That's visible. You can see a woman in a certain dress code, or if a hand is being amputated. But Islam has much more complexity to it, and that's what I wanted to draw out from this example. I'm not giving you a clear-cut final answer. It requires, you're now at university, you can do your own research. There's entire books written on what it means by personal identity and the constructs involved, social identities, how the two interplay. Sociology, psychology, social psychology, these are the areas you need to maybe have a look at. But something to really think about, you are engaged in this all the time, it is shaping you, molding you. Okay, finally, we've touched on the types, causes of controversies, we've looked at some contemporary controversies, and one of the important elements is to always bear in mind, people need to understand. That's how you put a controversy to bed. The fact, if you can't make the other side understand or make sense of your answer, you will not put that issue to bed. It will run and run and run. Most of the current controversies that are running, you're getting Muslims falling into a number of traps. They're trying to take existing liberal ideas in the West. These are right, their values are good, and let's try bending and twisting Islam to fit. And very easily they uncover that. They just read our history, our thousands of scholars and whatever. You guys are liars. You're distorting it. You're not engaged in honest debate or discussion. So it's one thing we've got to be very careful of. And the second point, my own background is research and education. Throughout our school lives, we go through schooling without really understanding. We go through the motions, and our target is almost certificates. Most of you will probably be here, I'm going to get a degree, it'll open up doors for me. You're not necessarily making sense and understanding of the stuff you cover. So as a quick example, you've all done 10 years of maths. If I ask you all, define maths, what does this word mean? You can probably go away and think about it, I won't give you the answer. But it should make you realize I've spent 10 years of my life, from primary school all the way at least to secondary, maybe A-levels, maybe some of you doing physics, which is applied maths. And you cannot put together a simple explanation of what is maths. You'll come up with examples. It's numbers, it's formula, it's operations, it's this, that, and the other. Yeah, these are examples within maths. Well, it's got algebra, it's got arithmetic. These are the typology, the categorization of maths. What is maths? We make sense through narratives. This is one of the probably most fundamental findings of how humans understand and make sense. Stories. As children, you're told stories. Jack and the Beanstalk, Goldilocks, all the rest of it. We lose that when we enter the education system. So when we're trying to explain many of these issues and controversies, by saying contextualization, what we're saying is tell us the story, tell us the narrative, where it began, what's been going on, who the actors are, what are the events, so it makes sense. And this is why in most societies they've used narrative to pass meaning generation to generation. Always useful to try looking at all of these controversies. What's the story going on here? Let me look within Islam and try to make sense of it, rather than let me just answer something. One of the sisters mentioned, as she was giving an explanation, that we wear this hijab, it's our right to wear it. We have the right to choose. The standard answer to that would be, that if you had the right to choose to wear the hijab, and it's your right, would you be happy with a woman who wears a bikini? Or low-cut dress? Or skirt up to her thigh, mini skirts? You wouldn't, would you? And if you said, yes, I would be happy, they wouldn't trust you. He's been dishonest. They don't really believe that. Then why are we using arguments like that? It's very atomizing events and trying to answer them. It's often quite useful to try standing back to make sense of it. Okay, Jazakallah khairan for attending. If there are any other questions, I'm around. Feel free to zap them at me. If you could pass the whiteboards to the front and the markers and all the rest of it.
Thank you very much. Very good.